Hello and welcome. My name is Rick Watson, and it's the weekend. I'm happy to be here on the Watson Weekend with you. We are trying to give you your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment. I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, it's Jessica Lasesky. Please ignore the weird duck mallard guy
I
in
love
the
that.
background. We're making it work today. I'm hanging in Minneapolis on my way home, but excited to be here with you guys.
As long as the duck isn't like trying to peck at you during the show, that would be
He
a
might
bad
later.
thing.
He might later. Watch out, guys.
Oh my gosh! As a reminder, we are on a live show here, and so we would love to hear where are you listening from. If you could type that in the chat and hit that enter button, mash it down. I'm in New York City. Jess is in Minneapolis. Where are you listening from?
Yeah, let us know. And also, don't forget, you can ask live questions here. Make comments. Our producer, Vinny, will throw them up on the screen. You get your 5 seconds of fame. So, because we're so widely distributed. But yeah, please interact on the show. We love to hear from you. And thanks so much for listening. I think you got some fun facts of the day for us, Rick.
Yeah, we have some fun facts for today. To start out with, we go all the way back from 1776. Richard Lee, is representative from Virginia, moves a direct Declaration of Independence in the Continental Congress. It's hard to remember that we weren't a United States of America at one point.
That is pretty crazy. And where was Richard Lee in the whole Hamilton rendition of this? I don't remember this guy, but
he was not there.
He was not there. And I also not recalling him from my 5th grade history. So what does that tell you? Really sticks with you.
He was not in the room where it happened.
He was not in the room where it happened. Sure not.
Right. Next is, I think, actually a little bit more valuable historical stat. 1982, Graceland, Elvis Presley's home, is open to the public. Jess, have you been to Graceland?
Gosh, I have not. I've been to Dollywood.
So disappointed.
I know. Isn't that sad? It's got to be on my bucket list at some point. Dollywood is really fun. If you guys haven't been on, do you have a favorite Elvis song?
Don't Be Cruel.
Oh, Don't Be Cruel is good.
Yeah.
I like, Blue Christmas is always a go-to around the holidays.
Blue Christmas.
Also, I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. That one.
That's
Fools
a
Rush
classic.
In. Yeah.
Heartbreak
That's
Hotel.
A classic. Oh yes. Yeah.
That's a really good one.
So, I got an Elvis impersonator from my my father-in-law's 70th birthday. It was a big hit. Big hit.
I love it. Yeah, I can imagine that would be a big hit. On the show today, we have a whole bunch of interesting topics. We're going to get to the headline hangover in a second, where we're going to talk about the news of today. Our guest today that we're going to bring on later on is Vince Santo, who spent a number of years in the agency business. We're going to talk about the state of the market, platforms, the Celtics, his weird running ritual. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, we're going to start with the headline hangover. Why don't you take us away, Jess?
I got one for you. I'm a Costco fan, just of the business, the model. And what's interesting is in recent news, they have come out and reassured customers that your $1.50 hot dog is safe. So don't worry, guys. The price of the hot dog and the soda are staying. It was a big to-do. Everyone on social media was going crazy, hand claps, raise hands. It's all very exciting. And we all know that this is a big traffic driver for them. They sold nearly 200 million hot dogs and soda combos last year. Yeah. And we wanted to show you a little bit of data here, because while the rest of the world is experiencing dogflation in your hot dog prices rising, again, Costco, not just with the hot dog, but your soda, keeping it tight at $1.50, which is pretty exciting. I didn't know if you knew this, Rick, because the rotisserie chicken is also a big deal for them, right? Like, brings traffic. I used to have a saying when I was at Spoonflower, like, hey, what's our chicken? Like, what's the thing that's going to get people in the door? And let's just throw it out there. So, they actually are so hell bent on this strategy, like doubling down on like getting people in the door and keeping that price. They bought a chicken farm. So like cut
That's
out the
amazing.
middleman. Did you know
I
that?
love it. No, I did not know they had their own chicken farm. That's pretty hilarious to me. Question for you and the audience. How many Costco hot dogs have you eaten in your lifetime?
Oh, in my lifetime, man, I hit that pretty hard growing up. Being a farmer's daughter, that's Sunday lunch right there.
Zero is my answer.
0 is your answer?
Yeah, it really
Well,
is.
actually, but we weren't caught. We were Sam's Club for a while, so
Yes.
we just actually
Um,
ate by the samples.
that's hilarious.
All right, what you got up for next for us?
Next in, if you had Shein on your bingo card at 6 minutes and 12 seconds, then you would be the winner. Shein is actually challenging eBay by introducing a resale exchange marketplace in Europe, starting with France soon. Essentially, eBay has this feature, and I've seen other marketplaces have this feature. If you go into your order history, and of course, people buy a lot of crap, like literal crap on Shein, you can go in and say, like, oh, I bought these 1,000 things in the last 2 months. I click on it, and then I can sell it back through the Shein exchange, and someone else could sort of like, do you call it there's a term called
Re-commerce?
re-gifting, re-commerce. Sometimes it's called re-gifting. I call this re-crapping.
Re-love? So I just didn't know that Shein clothes would last that long.
That friend.
I mean, I don't know, guys. Like, Drew Barrymore, who we all know is the fairy gift godmother of Etsy, I don't think she would approve of this method because we know that those things that you get at the end of the day from Shein are going to fall apart. Minimal lead, as the
Right.
SNL
Minimal
skit said.
lead.
You guys haven't seen it. It's hilarious. Minimal lead. And then secondly, that thing is not even meant to last a wash. So I don't know how you're loving this item.
You're not re-loving it. You're throwing it out, and it will still end up in the wasteland here. So
Yes.
that's pretty crazy. Why don't you
Yeah.
take us into Father's Day, which is coming soon?
Yeah. So Father's Day is coming up. We would love to know because I'm still searching for gifts for my dad. I don't know if you are, Rick. So if anyone has good gift ideas, please drop them in. Let us know. But Father's Day is coming up, and our friends and probably major fans of the show at NRF have laid out what they believe is the projections, which is to be record-setting 22.4 billion this year. They did a survey with NRF did a survey with Prosper Insights and Analytics. It's the second highest figure in the survey's history. And what's interesting is it's following what they say is a record-breaking Mother's Day projection. We have not seen the final numbers of Mother's Day, and this doesn't break out what the projections are going to be. Inflation versus actual spend. So, do we still think that consumers resilient? I don't know. I'm going to call not so much on this one.
Yeah, calling BS on this one. What recession? Me worry. NRF is like seems to alternate between like we're all gonna die, and people are stealing all of our stuff from our stores, but the economy is great. So
consumers resilient.
Buy some stuff. We're resilient. That's the word of the year.
I think that they're actually maybe professional manifestors, right? If you put it out into the world, it will happen. So
yes,
you've got an interesting evolution of shopping that I think you want to talk to us about.
Yeah, it looks like there is a sneaky, strange event in New York City where if you want to shop like Bruce Wayne, you will be able to until Monday, June 3rd through June 10th. Now follow me here. There is a hidden New York mansion that the location obviously is not known. You don't know what's going to be in when you get inside. You don't know how to get invited to it, and you don't know how to buy things once you're in there. So
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like Warner Brothers has been trying to tap into shopping in a variety of different ways. I actually remember back in my old days at Channel Advisor, selling Warner Brothers on their store and setting up an e-commerce experience for them. So yes, they have been trying to crack this nut for a while. What's interesting to me is there is no Batman summer movie coming out. This isn't tied to anything. This is just rando speakeasy influenced come shop here, but you don't know what's in there. Are you going to hit it up this weekend?
If I can find it, I don't think I'm on the A list. This is almost like that bar, and there's a bar in New York City called PDT. Please don't tell. And you can't like get in, or you have to like go in the back of the phone booth and like hit on the door twice. I've never been in there either. Just like I've had no hot dogs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's also, I just read about a Swiftie speakeasy where you go in and it's just for Swifties and they only play Taylor Swift music and you just get to have your love fest with Tay Tay. So
Oh,
that
that's
one is.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to give up your bracelet to get in?
Yeah, actually. You have to have at least 18 friendship bracelets to get in the door.
I love that.
All right. So I think we've got one more thing for you. Is the tipflation story.
That's right.
Yeah. So have you heard of this, Rick, where there was a TikToker who has had, 1.4 million views on a video where he's like, if I stand up, I am not tipping you. If you do not deliver your food to me, I don't tip you. If you hand something over the counter, I don't tip you. But in this world where everything has gotten so digital, do you have the guilt of like not hitting the tip button when you're going in a quick serve restaurant?
Zero guilt.
Zero guilt.
I mean, literally, I lived my whole life, which is pretty long at this point, and I never felt guilty before now. And so just because you put a new screen in front of me, and it's almost like, imagine it if you were a server and as part of going around, it'd be like church, you pass the basket. Like, you know what I mean? Like you bring the collection plate as part of like, hey, here's your apps. And by the way, here's the tip jar.
Yeah. Well, when people paid with cash, like the extra change did go in the tip jar. So maybe they're just trying to bring it back.
Yes, they are.
Bada bing, bada boom. So also let us know, do you guys get tip guilt? I got to admit, I do. Like the person standing across there, I'm like, sure, I'll throw you a 50 cents on this order.
Well, Miles Thomas has this here. If you stand up at a cafe in Italy, you don't tip. If you sit down at a table, you do. That's kind of what I would think most people believe.
That's probably what the rules should be, but we are a far cry from that.
Hundo P, my friend.
Yeah.
All righty. We are done with our headline hangover. And next up, we have our guest, which I am super excited about. I have gotten to know Vince more and more over the past year or so. He is currently the CEO of a consultancy and agency called the Maze Group, but he has, more or less legendary status in the e-commerce space, particularly in the consulting and agency side. He, going back to 2011, he was brought in to be president of a large agency called Hive, which started at ATG Oracle, went into Demandware, and now he is CEO of Maze Group. He's spent 25 years really at the intersection of strategy, design, and technology, and he has the world's strangest running ritual. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Vince Santo.
Hey guys, happy Friday.
Yes, so
and
happy.
By the way, I do have tip guilt. I'm Italian, so I'm all full of guilt. So tip guilt. Yeah, I'm a fool for that.
Well, I think somebody mentioned, that their families in hospitality. I was a waitress. Like the struggle is real. You're not making a lot of money. So I don't know. I always feel like, throw them another dollar or whatever.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's the point.
That's the point. So we have been hyping up this run ritual. Can you just start with telling us about that?
Sure.
What you do?
So years ago when I was marathon training, we have a house up in Hudson and it's in the middle of nowhere. So there's horse farms, there's other types of farms. So I'd get up in the morning for my long run and I would have a Bailey's coffee. And my kids would laugh and say, what are you doing?
What?
But I have to tell you, it takes the edge off like a 15, 20 mile run.
Yeah.
And no matter how good the music is on your iPhone, Bailey's enhances the experience. So I highly recommend it for those that may be marathon training on weekends.
Hopefully not too much of it.
No, just enough so that you taste it and it takes the bitterness out of the coffee and the bitterness out of the run for sure. Nice. I highly recommend it.
How many marathons have you done?
I've done 6, I think. I don't do
Wow.
it anymore. I have a bum knee, but
Oh,
yeah, and my favorite is Chicago because it's in October, it's cold and it's flat. And
yeah.
Chicago's a great city to run, and
Yeah.
deep dish pizza and all that. So it's all good.
That's a
That's
good one.
awesome.
Deep dish pizza will power out as many people as Bailey sometimes. If you have a weird running ritual, we would love to hear about it in the chat.
Yes.
So
And if you're a Bailey's runner, I would love to know. I mean, maybe we
You guys
start a
could like start
community.
your own little group. Yeah.
That's a brilliant
these
idea.
little niche communities. Yep.
Exactly. The eCom Bailey's Coffee Marathon Training Community.
You're going to have to acronym that.
Too many letters.
Yeah.
Oh, how many 14ers? I used to, in a prior life, I did a lot of mountain climbing until I got remarried, and my wife pretty much said, stop doing that. So I took up marathons.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit safer.
It's a bit safer. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, look, we're going to start out the show. I mean, I think as part of it, you can talk a little bit about your background and things that you're passionate about. But one of the things that we were talking about in prep was just the state of the market. It seems like for whatever reason, and I was writing about this on LinkedIn earlier this week, everyone's just sort of like waiting around for the quote unquote dust to settle.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like things seem pretty crazy. We're in an election year. Interest rates are going up and down, and employment's going up and down. And like, is this a good year or not? I'm not sure. What can I forecast? And that seems to have frozen everyone. True? Not true?
That's definitely what we are seeing. It's the old FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? I think sales cycles are getting extended. And what we're experiencing, and I'm CEO of the business, but I'm very involved with clients. That's the fun part of my job more than actually running the business. And with a lot of the clients I'm dealing with, they're kind of stuck where I think it's a combination of cost of capital is high with interest rates high, and then all the uncertainty, Rick, that you mentioned with 2 wars, presidential election, unemployment's up, it's down, the market's up, it's down. I think people are uncertain, and that flows right through to consumers buying product, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a result, clients are just unsure. Do I invest? Do I wait? And, we have a whole advisory business, which is actually doing very well right now, more so than the implementation side, to just help clients think through this. Like, am I on the right platform?
Mm-hmm.
We need to save money. We re-platform, but there's a CapEx cost to that. So we're involved in so many of those conversations because I think people are frozen and they're in analysis paralysis, afraid to spend money, but they know if they don't do something, it could impact them in holiday, and they're kind of stuck. Like, what do we do? And we try to unlock that, by crunching numbers, looking at the technology, understanding the business growth vectors, and making suggestions. But what we're seeing is people are just frozen right now, and not a lot is moving.
Yeah. So if you're a sales rep in the audience, then maybe you can maybe feel a little bit better by what Vince is saying. You were going to say something, Jess?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways to unpack this. I guess I would start first. I have a 2-part question. The first part is it gotten better or worse than, you had 2020, the COVID era, which was crazy. 2021, pull back again. 2022, maybe people uncertain. 2023, people thought it was going to crash. So I was curious if it's better or worse. And then the second part of that question is there anything you're finding that will unlock or make someone move? And so that might be helpful to the audience too.
Yeah. It's interesting. 2020, we were 8 people and a dog in an office in Soho, New York. We had, other than the first few months, probably Q2 when COVID, we really started to feel the effects of it.
Yeah.
But I'd say 2020, we actually had a little bit of a growth spurt. 21, 22 into the beginning of 23, we went up to 50 people and grew. And we virtualized the business. So we have people all across the US. So we started to feel this malaise, shall we say, in Q4 of last year into the first 2 months of this year. And frankly, it unnerves you when you see this, where people are unsure. They're not spending money. Holiday 23 wasn't so great. Thankfully, the second part of Q1 of this year, things unlocked and started moving. But as we approach the summer and as we approach the election and all this nonsense going on around the world, I think people are frozen again. And I'm concerned because we're going into the summer months when people take holiday, things slow down. So, yeah, I mean, you know, and I've lived through the internet boom and bust. I lived through the financial crisis. I think this is another one, and it's the hangover effect from all the stimulus pumped into the economy during COVID, which now with interest rates high, although central bank in Canada and Europe lowered rates, we'll see what the Fed does. I think that could be, to answer the second part of your question, I think that's the unlock. It's when people feel safe that there's liquidity. They feel like they're not struggling to pay their mortgage and buy food. I think that's when things will begin to unlock. And I'm hoping in the second part of this year that we see that. You know, the reality is there are a lot of clients running on very antiquated systems. And with everything digital nowadays, if you're not investing, you're going backwards, right? You're either going forward or going backwards. There's no staying put. And that's the conversation we try to have, but also with some analysis of their business model, their financials, to help them, you know, out of this blockage, this mental fear and blockage that they have. And frankly, you know, if you look at history, these are the times to actually, if you can afford to invest, start investing in things, because eventually we will come out of this funk. And when we do, are you positioned for growth, or do you have to start from square one, which you're behind some of the smarter competitors that did invest?
Yeah, I mean, investing through some of these times, history shows, like from a market point of view, if you invest through any market downturn and don't worry about like, oh, do I put my money in or take my money out over a 5, 10, any 5-year period in history, you're going to, and I think that's true for e-commerce because the lead times tend to only last for a certain amount of time. People that are visionary and are focused on, if you can't acquire new customers, then you should be focusing on making your existing customers more efficient. Even doing that requires more investment because you need to give them a better experience in order to do that. And so Christopher Bousquet had a different, interesting comment that he meant a second ago. Are we entering an era where people are optimizing for efficiency and cost? I think definitely. Nick Kaplan and I have talked about that last week. He talked about the age of efficiency here on the program. And we preach this to a lot of people. We've talked about it on LinkedIn. Cash flow, cash is king. Cash flow, not just profitability, but cash flow is king. Meaning like if you have cash, which is your inventory, if you can turn it faster, then you're going to be better than your competitor.
Yeah. First of all, shout out to Chris. How's it going? Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly that. If you can afford to invest, it behooves you to do that during this down period, because we will not stay in a down period forever, right? It's you know, what goes up must come down, and what is down must go up, I think, at some point. That's a new rule of gravity that I just created. But all joking aside, I think, you know, we've pivoted because we see clients are not spending as much on implementations. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned earlier, we're providing advisory services. But the other thing we're doing is, how do you get the most out of what you have? So we have a whole team that does not just conversion rate optimization, looking at analytics, but we look at existing commerce businesses through the lens of site usability, you know, Lighthouse scores, site speed, merchandising. Are you really merchandising in an effective way to really eke out as much as you can with what you have, with a smaller investment versus a big capital investment to re-platform? So we're doing more of that these days. And hopefully that then unlocks some of the bigger investment to do what I believe is the right thing to do, whether it's re-platforming or upgrading what you have.
Yeah. People know that I say this a lot, but I think there's also a lack of focus on the fundamentals, and there is a lot to unlock when you can get a couple basis points of, you know, improvement in cart abandonment. Or if you look at your funnel and you find new customers coming in through MWeb or dropping off in this space. Like, it is going back to that core element of how do you optimize and drive e-commerce in understanding your customer. Like, I do think sometimes people are like, oh, what's a customer going to do? Well, you have a customer already. How do you just create a better experience for them versus worrying about what are they going to do in the future? So are you finding that like people are getting some unlocks that way, you know?
Some are,
Yeah.
you know, with our CRO service, and it's like CRO as a service, right? Optimization as a service, as we like to call it. You know, it's a safer way to invest a little bit to get a nice return. And frankly, it becomes almost self-funding.
The flywheel,
you
right?
unlock some of these things, and they do see a financial benefit. It may incentivize them to spend a little more and try a little bit more. So we're seeing incremental improvements with that in our business. But we're sitting on a couple of big implementation opportunities, big migrations, and I think our clients are in analysis paralysis, and we're trying to just not just selfishly for us, but also for them.
For them,
help us help you, kind of. And that's what we're trying to do, and it's all based on their data and what they share with us in terms of their strategy and their growth, expectations.
Yeah. And then I think, look, people are kind of going back to the Clash song, "Should I Stay or Should I Go Now?" It sounds like people are staying. And we did a white paper a few months ago here, and essentially the title of it, shout out to the folks at Shopware that helped us commission it, which is really like the mid-market platform experience right now is a wasteland. Like it seems like there are a lot of choices, but in actuality, there are like very few choices. And even though the few choices that are there, people don't see the benefit. If you're a CMO and you're going to be in your role for 2 years, are you going to get behind a major replatform that's going to take the length of your tenure?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we talk about is thankfully we have many clients that have us on annual or a couple of year retainer. Rather than big bang capital project to intergalactic migrate, we actually do some of the migration during a run service contract where we incrementally move pieces. And it gets a bit challenging because going from one platform to another or upgrading within the existing, there are a lot of gotchas in there, but that seems more palatable than the big CapEx, go spend a couple of $1 million and migrate. So that's one of the ways we've helped clients think about it, just getting creative. Like, these are tougher times right now. So how do you continue to invest in your business without overextending yourself, but also advance the business? Don't be frozen and kind of stuck.
No, that makes sense. And I think some of this gets into the agency market. I mean, what I've observed, and I think you and I and all of us have been in e-commerce for a long time, agencies used to rely on these huge retainers, right? And like just expect the fact that like, oh, the implementation is great, but who cares about the implementation? That's a one-time. I want a big retainer. And as these more agile SaaS platforms come along, there's less for the agency to do because you're not like patching security holes in Magento. Apologies to Adobe. You know what I mean? Like these things just don't exist anymore like they used to, because you can click a button on an app store and then have a new feature. You don't need the agency to do that half the time anymore. So how do you think, like, we also have a lot of agencies and brands that use agencies in the audience as well. How has the agency business model shifted from your point of view, having started, run, exited? Like, you're the guru of agencies, Vince.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate you saying that. One of the things I learned early on, and I worked with a fellow named Bob Burke, who became the CEO of ATG, and when they sold to Oracle, made $1 gazillion, and now he's sipping margaritas on his island somewhere.
On a boat somewhere.
Not Bailey's?
Not Bailey's.
No, they don't drink Bailey's in the Caribbean. Too heavy.
Okay.
But one of the things he said to me,
Cream
which
doesn't sit
was
well.
very simple but profound, is people buy and come back to clients with people they like and people they trust. So one of the things I've always done as part of our ethos in whatever business I've been involved with is just do great work. So of course we want the longer term, long tail retainers, but at the end of the day, it's all about adding value. Because again, people give business to people they like and trust and who they've had success with. So of course we aspire to get the bigger projects, the long tail retainers, but what we mostly look to do is just add value wherever you can. Because clients, unless they're just sitting on their laurels, they want to invest, even in these difficult periods, even if it's small amounts, to just improve the business. And they want to work with partners that, of course, have their own self-interest, but are also trying to help clients, and they trust you. I mean, that's one of the things I'm proud of with Maze, actually. We have clients that have worked with us 3-4 times. They keep coming back for a reason. And what I keep instilling in our team is just figure out how to add value. Let's just add value. And if that's it, if it's a short project, we add value and it's over, so be it. They will come back to us when they have their next challenge to face. That's the advice I would give. And I talked, we have a lot of competitors, but it's pretty collegial. We all speak to each other and kind of commiserate on what's going on and talk sports occasionally, which Rick knows I am always happy to do. But, that's the advice I would give to anyone. Just add value, do the right thing, because karma, it will come back to you.
Right. I think those are all good things. One of the things that I'm unpacking from your advice to agency owners, for instance, is diversify. If you're a one-trick pony and saying like, oh, we have engineers and you're a staff aug agency, if they don't need engineers, then you're SOL.
Totally. One of the things that I kind of pride myself on, and this is probably why my glasses keep getting thicker and thicker. I'm a voracious reader. I read everything. I'm up early reading before the day starts. And then at night, if I'm watching a game, I'm getting bored. I start reading things.
Yeah.
We keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening out there. And we try to read the trends and then invest a little bit ahead of the curve and try things out. Like right now, the big buzz is Gen AI, and now the FTC and the Justice Department are going to be going after the big guys, whether it's, the acqui-hire at, Microsoft, whatever. But look, AI, we're still in the very early innings. It's an area we're beginning to experiment with Copilot and some other areas of our business. But, I think, the other thing, and I say this to prospects and clients and frankly, partners, I've been in technology forever. I could probably count on one hand the number of clients that actually have their act together with data. Have all these silos and business has grown up and they bolt on different pieces.
Yeah.
AI is useless unless you have clean data and you're building models that leverage clean data to make smart business decisions. And I think that's an area of growth, just in an advisory capacity, helping clients figure out how do you clean up your data. And by the way, when you finally get to that point, what do you want to do with it? How is it going to improve your business and grow your business and make you run more efficiently? So that's an area we're experimenting with. And again, keeping our finger on the pulse. I keep saying to my team, and all due respect to all the other commerce platforms, but for the last few years, I've always been saying it's a 2-horse race between Salesforce and Shopify. Depending, you can see who's in the pole position. We could debate that for another Watson weekend, which will probably be a Watson quarter, not weekend.
Yeah.
So much to
unpack. It's a cage match.
It's a cage match. But
that'll be our first conference.
It could be. With Bailey's coffee served in the morning. But
I got you.
Yeah. How's that for a concept?
There we go.
But I think it really is a 2-horse race by now. And there's VTEX, which is one of your sponsors that I know is very successful in Latin America, looking to break into the US market. They have an interesting platform. Travis, my friend, I know is a big commerce. It'll be interesting to see. But it's really those two battling it out right now. And they're both very good platforms. I have my opinion of one or the other, but I think that's where the action is right now. And it's not just the platform, but it's the surrounding ecosystems associated with it. And
Yeah.
how do you really eke out value with not a lot of investment until things really open up and capital starts flowing again? We have a lot of those conversations going on as well. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out this year into next year.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because that to me goes back to a fundamental element. If your data is bad, like you can't run segmentation well, you
Right.
can't do personalization well, you can't, triangulate between all of these various channels that are driving. There's
Right.
just so many different downstream impacts. And do you find that like people are cautious about even how they use the data because they're scared of like privacy? Different states have now their own versions of privacy laws. We know EU and GDPR. People are struggling with that still continuously. How do you think about that in part of the advisory? Are you helping people also understand what they can and can't do with it?
It's funny. About a year ago, when people really started buzzing about AI and ChatGPT, LLMs, I probably spent the first half of the year speaking weekly with our attorney to just understand, like, how we
what do we do?
experiment with this without crossing the line on PII and everything.
Right,
And, we're beginning to see now with the government intervening, there's all this fear that AI is going to take over the world, and, they got to put a clamp on it. I think what we tell our clients is, I would identify an area in your business where this could add tremendous value. The prerequisite is cleaning up the data, which could be a year-long project, frankly, just to clean it up. But I would identify some areas and just experiment a little bit and be careful of security, privacy, et cetera,
Right.
because a lot of these models too, if you're using external data, you could inadvertently expose information, and whether you're violating copyright laws with content, we're seeing that all over the place, right? With the deep fakes. So
Yeah.
I think we're still in the early innings. I think, being in the industry all these years, technology innovation absolutely leads, and then government regulation and law kind of lags behind. And I think that's where we are right now. I would say proceed with caution, pilot, try things out, be careful, be really careful, drink a lot of Bailey's coffee. And just,
go for runs, clear your head.
Yeah, clear your head, go for a run, drink some Bailey's coffee, and see where it goes.
This is great. I mean, this is, I think, amazing advice with regards to AI. Get your data cleaned up before you can expect miracles. I find there's no silver bullet, people. And I think that is missed by a lot of clients. Do you think the hype is just designed by, speaking of trust and sales reps, do you think the hype in AI is just perpetrated by sales reps to create FOMO, to like, hey, you're going to need this, trust us, and then you implement it? Does it really create trust if you don't have the data to power it?
Again, as I said earlier, watching the trends and then trying to figure out which ones have legs and don't. Like my daughter, she and her boyfriend are mining Bitcoin. And I'm like, she's like, Dad, you got to invest in Bitcoin. I didn't, thank God, although a lot of friends have made a lot of money. I think AI is not a flash in the pan. It's not one of those, ephemeral things that it's got a lot
been
of
around for decades already.
Right. I mean, I actually did work with AI like 100 years ago in grad school, but we were working with mainframes, which, this has more capacity than what I was working with. So you couldn't do much with natural language processing. But I think because of the inexpensive nature of computing power, I mean, you look at what NVIDIA is doing, they're like $1,200 a share, which I could have bought at $6, so I'm kicking myself. But that's another.
Speaking of investments.
But I think, where was I going with this? I think we're in the early innings of AI. I think this is a trend that will not go away, but I think there's a lot of overhype right now.
Right.
And it's going to take a couple of years before people actually figure out how to use it effectively, how to clean up most of their data so you don't have bad data making decisions, and then you have hallucinations with the data. I think it's going to be a while, and I think the government's going to clamp down on this because of anti-competitive concerns.
Mhm.
But I do think AI is not one of those flash in the pans. I think it's here to stay, and it will have tremendous value for businesses. It's just, I think that's the next growth vector for a lot of agencies out there working with big data and how to really leverage these models for effective business impact. That's my read on it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I do believe that there is a lot of foundational data work that needs to happen, and then you can build models based on that data. And then, and only then, can you then use AI with those models in your customer workflows and to benefit the lives of customers, which is this is supposed to be all
Supposed to be what
about.
it's all about, 100%.
Well, right. That's what we've been talking about, personalization for 100 years.
Ever,
Yes.
forever,
Since
forever.
the discovery of fire and the wheel, right? And and look, there are some use cases. We're actually using, some AI in very basic things,
Uh-huh.
and it's helpful, right?
Right.
My wife, I don't think, could write, a brief without Gen AI, right? I mean,
Right.
so we're seeing a lot of these things, and but I think the real big use cases that will have dramatic business impact, positive
Right.
impact, we're not there yet, and we're probably
Right.
not going to be there for a while, my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'd love to hear, like, if you have any last words for us, like advice for the audience. If you're a brand, like getting out of this frozen, I go back to the beginning a little bit. You feel frozen, you're doing too much analysis. What should they do instead?
I would look into the future a little bit and say, where we are right now, we're stuck. We're financially constrained. Customers are not buying. I would try to look a little bit beyond that and say, with whatever resources we have available now, what are the things we could do in anticipation that we will come out of this funk? And how do I pilot things, experiment, maybe make small investments? Because at some point we will come out of this. I don't know when, but we will. And how do we position ourselves for what comes next? Because it's always, it's up and down, right? We're in a funk right now.
Right.
We're going to come flying out of the gates at some point. I think when the Fed lowers rates, whenever that is, that's when the floodgates will open and people will start spending. So what can you do now with whatever resources you have to at least position yourself for when things
To be ready.
be ready and know where you want to invest those dollars, where you could get the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean, prioritize. There was a Jack Nicholson movie that we probably both remember. Like, what if this is as good as it gets? Like, you're not promised that things are going to get better or worse, and so even if you assume things are going to stay the same, you need to be investing because you have to improve the experience of your customers if you want to grow the business. You're not going to grow the business by waiting.
Well, that's it. If you're not going forward, you're going backwards. I don't think there is such a state of just stay put, hunker down and wait for everything. You're either creeping backwards or you're moving forward, even creeping forward a little bit. Status quo gets you mediocrity. You got to figure out what to do. And again, I get it. There's constrained resources, constrained budgets. There's been a ton of layoffs. With whatever you have, how do you experiment and pilot certain things so that you're positioned for the future? That's what we're doing in our business. And that's the advice I would give to anyone that's running a business today.
Oh, that's a great place to end. And actually, we could take it into our next segment, actually, which is what's happening with the consumer. And the consumer, we've heard this phrase YOLO for so long, and it is yo-no territory. And people are really scratching their heads. They actually cannot understand why. Why are we in this state? And so there's been some data that a friend of the show, Hendrik, shared with us around a Sherwood News synthesis of the Harris and Guardian survey on the economy, which talks about why this consumer is defying what economists feel is a good economy. And like, you should be happy. So they ran this poll, and I want to run a couple of data points by you. 3 in 5 Americans believe the economy is in a recession. We are not in a recession. We haven't been in a recession since 2020. So think about that. 49% think the S&P is been down for a year. It's up 12% year to date. And that's coming off of a year where we ended 2023 up 24%. So kind of let that settle in. And 49% believe that unemployment is at a 50-year high. We just got the jobs report. It came out. So we actually are at a 50-year low. So yes, unemployment ticked up in this latest jobs report, but the jobs report blew out expectations. It's 272,000 a month, up 165,000 from April, and well ahead of what was the consensus and the forecast that it would be at 190. So that's kind of another myth busted. And again, these economists are like, what is happening with the consumer perspective? Like, why are they just not able to get over this? And so we've got a couple of data points to show you, Vinny, if you don't mind firing up. So, that's kind of the story here. Like, we've outgrown our G7 peers. And so if you look at these other nations, we're performing much better than these other economies. And then we're going to go to the next slide, which really just kind of talks about where the perspective is. Inflation is top of mind by far for Americans' top concern, and they're hearing about it, right? But inflation in the minds of the economist is it's down, right? If you saw it at
it's the hot dog price. It's the hot dog price.
So like, let's go to the next one, because this really is what I think where the economists are disconnected from the reality of what's happening with consumers. Look at these changes since 2020. You've got insurance, gas, energy, shelter, medical, personal, food away from home, AKA your McDonald's, your Starbucks, your
Starbucks.
Starbucks. Yeah, that's fine. Your Starbucks, your cars and trucks. Well, yes, that's come down a little bit, but still look at it over time. I mean, just McDonald's alone has admitted their Big Mac is more expensive, and food is up 34% since 2019. So I think that that's the interesting thing here is we have this disconnect between what economists are saying and what consumers are experiencing that really shakes out to where we are.
Yep. For what it's worth, my opinion on this, 2 words: social media. We're in an election year, so there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think the Biden administration has not done a great job convincing people that things are not as bad. What was it? The Clinton administration, which it's the economy, stupid.
Right.
The numbers are not as bad, but there's a large percentage of the population that's not experiencing it. I think people that work in technology, commerce, digital marketing, that's not the majority of the population. And I think there are a lot of people that are really experiencing the hardship, and it's not, these numbers mean nothing to them because they're not seeing it in their paycheck, in their lifestyle. And the other thing is what they're getting inundated with on social media and from the politicians. Things are bad. Like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Things are really bad here. And I think that's why there's this major disconnect between what the data is telling us and perception and the mood of people in the economy.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it's the economy, stupid. That's he's from my home state, the Raging Cajun, James Carville. And I think essentially what a consumer experiences in their day-to-day life is extremely disconnected from what happens on CNBC or Bloomberg or the front of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is connected.
No. And we have another, kind of tied to this story, Sezzle and Vallarta supermarkets announced this partnership where now you can do buy now, pay later in the stores. Already a third of Americans use credit cards to buy their groceries. I guess it's not that different unless you kind of think about buy now, pay later as the devil's cousin of I mean, I don't know. Like, is this a safe play for letting customers continue to buy groceries on buy now, pay later?
I mean, that's the scary thing. Another stat that I was looking at is people that are in debt with credit cards. Credit card debt is rising. Interest rates are rising. It's a vicious cycle, right? Because you're borrowing to buy staples. Interest rates are high. How do you get ahead of that? So there's going to be a hangover effect when the Fed starts to lower rates and, there's some stimulus in the economy. There's going to be a lot of people still paying down debt, which is going to be a big problem. So the buy now, pay later, I don't know. I think it's just kicking the can down the road because at some point you have to pay it back.
That's the YOLO. That's the YOLO mentality.
That's the YOLO mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know it's supposed to be the happiness index, guys, and I'm sorry. We got to come up with something else to end on. I guess this is why we dance off of the show. But yeah, I think that this will be a thing to watch, and it will be interesting, to your point, Vince, like what the Fed now does with this latest jobs report. Employment did tick up, which is why the markets are kind of lukewarm on the news as of today, but remains to be seen. We will eagerly watch and continue to predict.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
All we can do.
That's right.
All we can do is all we can do.
Hey, but we're moving forward, not moving back.
Yes,
we're moving forward.
It will change. It's just be patient. It's going to take time.
Yeah, I think the word of this episode is courage. For you to be able to see through the fog, you actually have to have courage that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is not an oncoming train.
Yes.
Well said. Now we dance, Vince. Here we go.
Exactly.
Thanks, everybody.
Coffee. Yes.
Coffee.